Hey everyone, here with another reading review. Right now, my goal right now is for 2025 is 100 books this year. Let's see if I make it. Let's see if I don't make it. I'm not going to cry over the fact if I don't make it. It's just a nice little goal I set for myself, which my revolution was just to read more, and I specifically wrote like read more like Rory Gilmore. And then that in my brain, that kind of just translates to 100 books in a year. But if I don't make it, I'm fine with it. But I finished Hunting November, which is the second book from Killing November by Adrienne Mather. I read this book like 4 years ago, but I forgot everything about it. So I just reread it, put it back on my TBR and reread it. And this book is very dramatic. Bunch of, I would say, high school age kids, but they're in a like a academy that's like from way back in the day. And if you haven't read Killing November, read that one first before you read Hunting November. So this girl, November, gets dumped off at a school and ends up getting into like a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship with a guy, best friend with his twin sister. She has two cousins at this school from either side of her family. The Bear side, which is her mom's side, the Italians side, and then like the English side, which is the Lions, which is her dad's side. So that's like the backstory. But specifically in this book, they start off still at the school. She just wakes up from a dream, like a nightmare really, that kind of portrays well into the book later, so that's still kind of relevant. And she plans on her dad just disappears off of the face of the earth, so she plans to leave the academy to go find him. Her like almost boyfriend goes with her, and a whole lot of friends follow them afterwards, but they just don't know it yet. So they end up getting knocked out and transported back to her hometown. The reason why they get like knocked out is so they don't know where the academy is at all. Like they can't like somehow through torture or whatever figure out where the academy is. So they go back to her hometown, and out the outskirts of the town is like a whole bunch of forest. So she gets really sentimental, like, I'm back in my hometown, something that for months that I wish I could go back to, but it's not like I'm here, because it's not like I could tell anyone that I'm here, and I have to stay in the shadows. So she was really sentimental about that. And so her and Ash, which is the guy I'm referring to that she's with, goes back, kind of hangs out around her old house in the backyard, which is just nothing but woods. And her best friend Emily, she finds her pulling up to the house, and she like a whole bunch of roses with little notes on them, because what everyone believes is like those two, her and her dad, just disappear off the face of the earth, like with no regard of where they're at, just up and left. So she's pretty much in mourning of wondering where her best friend is, and she's getting really sentimental about that. Like, I have to run to her, I have to tell her I'm okay, I have to tell her not to worry. And Ash is like, no, you can't do that, because like you're gonna put her in danger, because whoever's hunting us, like she's gonna end up being a mark. So she fights with herself and has to stay back. And and at night, or through the back door, when it was getting closer to nighttime, they sneak into her house so they could just kind of just be somewhere, and they're like trying hard not to turn on any lights or go through any windows at all. And they're also searching the house for clues. And November's like, this is exactly how we left it. There's that magazine I was reading when my dad told me I was leaving for the academy, and my throw pillow is still like on the couch, and it's like on the exact same page it was when we left, in the old popcorn bowl. And then my dad's snowshoes is still at the front door. So it's like they were just there, even though it's been months and months and months. And she's, so she goes to her room and tries to find some clue that her dad left. And there, she was thinking, like, her old CDs, all her old pictures, things that she felt like she could never live without. And she realized that she can live without it because it's been months. And Ash is like, okay, I'll go look in your dad's room. And her dad's room is like totally like military out. And so they're trying to find clues and whatnot. And the first clue they found was in her room, is like one of the picture collages that she always critiques and she makes just so. And like the only thing, so that way she's the only one who could figure out if it's been messed with, because she's just was so precise of what picture goes where, which and what for them. And then her dad switches some pictures, so she noticed that. And one of the pictures with her and Emily when they were doing like a time capsule, and so they figured one of his clues has to be where the time capsule is, and like the dad must have put in a clue in there, and that's like in the backyard in the forest and one of the trees. And then the second one that Ash found was in the dad's room, in like his really well made bed. There was like a little seam in his mat, like his folded up sheet, and then he just could just stick the note in one of them. So they find that note, and then that note was a like meet me under the city, which is like London, like underneath the city. So, and then the note in the tree was a Strugate, I can't even say the word, this like organization that she's a part of, like Strugaya or something, I can't even, but that was named like Jack, and she thought of this like dog named Jack that they lived in, like the old fire chief. And she's like, why do he want me to talk to like the old fire chief who has a dog named Jack? And Ash was like, well, you know, there's this guy named Jack who's like in Scotland and who like just knows everything about everything. And it's like, maybe that's who your dad's preferring to. And then she kind of gets like kind of upset because it's like, she's like, I had to have Ash here to figure this out. And my dad's leaving me clues. Like if I was here by myself, I would have no idea what the hell he's talking about. So she's kind of getting mad that it's not personalized towards her, that she would have to have like another Stergia with her to figure it out. And so she's kind of has a pet peeve about that. And a little earlier than that, when they're still in the house, she's staring at all the roses and the notes that her best friend Emily is leaving like on the front porch. So she sneaks out through the back door and goes through all the different things she's like okay and not being tracked, and she's going through all the back doors and going through the trees of the people's backyards to get to her friend Emily's house. And she sneaks into her bedroom to like, hey, guess what, I'm still alive, but I'm okay, but I have to leave again. And she didn't realize that Ash was tracking her, and he actually ends up showing at the girl's bedroom window. And then they have like this explaining to do, whatnot, who are you, yada yada yada, and like this long goodbye. And he's like, you didn't know I was tracking you, so how do you know if someone who wanted to kill you wasn't tracking you either, and you just brought him to Emily's house? And she's like, yeah, moment of weakness, I'm sorry. And she's getting all emotional. And you know, Ash was right, there was a guy out there. And he's like, next thing they know is in the forest, they're hearing all these whooshing sounds. It ends up being a bow and arrow, and someone guy's trying to take them out. So they get into this fight with this guy who actually ended up being a cousin of hers, and she just didn't know it. And he's like trying to kill them, and they're like climbing through the trees like Tarzan and Jane and getting away from this guy, and this guy follows them up the tree, and she ends up like putting her foot down really hard on a branch, so he ends up getting knocked off and hitting in the back of his head with a rock, ends up bleeding out in the back of his head. So they end up stripping the body of keys and whatnot. Finds a plane that the hitman took to get him. So they take that plane to Scotland, and then within the plane ride, that's when she writes the note and finds the note of Jack and finds out that they have to go to Scotland. So they end up meeting this guy named Jack in a bar, and she ends up having a really good time with him and singing that kilt song with all the guy found was passed out, and all he found underneath his kilt is a mighty fine prize and like a bow. I can't even sing the song, but it's like an old Scottish just bar song. And so they end up singing that song, and the whole bar sings with that song. And then Ash takes her back to the room to kind of like decompress because she's like filled with whiskey. And the guy pretty much just gave her the information she wanted, and told him to go to this guy named Logan's house, which was a jackal, which that's gonna be relevant later. So they go to that guy's shop, and she is talking to him, trying to trade with them, and then she notices a poster on the wall, which heard about like a dance from like the 1300s. And so they find that as a clue and saying like, oh, my dad wants me to go to this ball. So pretty much what this is like a treasure hunt of trying to find her dad. Like her dad's leaving her little breadcrumbs of like, this is where I'm going to be, this is where you have to go. So they're in Scotland talking to this guy, and which is a distant cousin of another schoolmate that's going to end up joining her later. And like her name's like Arya, Aarya. I know I must be pronouncing that wrong, but that's pretty much like, and they're the Jackal family, but they're kind of resigned in the UK as well as the Lions. And so they end up getting into like a fight, and then Arya ends up burning his shed down. So he ends up putting like a hit out on them, and his distant cousin Arya is like touch her. And when they finally all meet up after a couple days, Arya's like, don't you dare touch her, whatnot. And after him poisoning her, because he was like tracking them all the way down through London, and she was meeting up with a group of these guys that don't belong to any family, but like was willing to work with any family. And what they don't know yet is that head guy was made a deal with her father to look out for her, but at the same time had to pretend like they're enemies because, worry eyes are watching. So they act like, don't go to that ball. If I see you there, you're going to be in trouble. I'm going to kill you, whatnot, yada, yada, yada. So then they, in that precise moment, they run away. And that's when Logan blows her with a blowtorch with poison and gets her. And then Arya comes up and tries to save her. And then she wakes up in Arya's apartment in like one of the center London, I want to say either center London or East London, because it kind of just seemed like there wasn't that much going on tourist wise. And so she wakes up there and finds out that her bear cousin Mito was in London too, and she wants to meet her aunt. And she ends up getting this poison from like a bear family member, but she's like an Appalachia. I don't know how to pronounce it, but she ends up ends up getting poisoned by her because she's being tested, but ends up getting the poison that she wants to kill her own grandfather, which, you know, he deserves it. He's an a-hole. And so they make up this huge elaborate plan of going to the ball, making sure that Hawk is the guy who's watching out for, doesn't recognize them because for the mask. Breaking down all these clues that her father's leaving her. Reading the newspaper because her father's leaving clues in the newspaper. And just trying to find this guy that the lions hired, called the furry man, hired to kill her father, and finding her father before he gets her, without ever knowing, and no one ever knew this until the very end, that her dad is actually the furry man. So her grandpa actually hired her dad to kill her dad, if that makes sense. And so everyone gets to this ball, and they get the clue that they need, and they end up going down underground, where, like, London has, like, an underground city where all the Strickria hang out, and they follow the, like, bodyguard guy for the lions, and he was the bouncer at the bar, so they follow him home and go, and they use their blow torches to knock out all the Strigia lions security detail. And she's like, this is too easy. Like, I feel like this is getting way too easy. And they figure out that it was too easy, and it was a setup, and then it was pretty much like a narrow pathway to get to the dungeon, exactly where her grandpa wants her to be. And she finds her dad locked up in the dungeon, and her grandpa comes out with all the Stricky bodyguards and was like clapping, yay, you here, and you just basically came right into my arms. And the nightmare I was telling you about is the dining room that they were going through, which was at the Lions Estate, looked exactly like the room that was in her dream, where all of her friends were dead, and she had like a poison in her hands, and her grandpa was like on top of the pile of all of her dead friends laughing. So Lions ends up knocking them out, and they get thrown in the dungeon, and they're in there for like a day, and they get hauled off to the upstairs into like the grand hall, and her grandpa puts on this big huge show. Her grandpa's pure evil, and how they traded information, and they were actually the terrorists of the family, so they end up getting executed, or try to at least, and it ends up becoming this big huge war. And the dad in the execution ends up being like a guy that dad hired, so he ends up not getting executed. And Ash's sister is like in the background with a bow and arrow, and her bear cousin is in the background with a bow and arrow, and Layla and Meadow, and they basically end up saving the day. And then Arya's best friend, who she grew up as a sister, ends up getting killed by November's grandfather. And that was a very dramatic moment for all of them, and they end up following her dad and, well, her grandpa out of the room because they chased her grandpa, and they were getting into a huge fight. And then her grandpa's like trying to order all of these people to like kill her dad, and or like help him kill her dad, because they're just like in a fist fight at that point. And he had some poison in his, no one would help him like at all, because like no one really liked her grandpa. And he had this poison in his pocket, and gonna have a blowtorch and stab her dad. And November called out her dad's real name and her grandpa's real name, and that just meant that he's doing something shady, because his real name in Old English means shady. So they figured that out, and then like everyone in the room stabbed Jackal, which is her grandpa's name, and bow and arrowed him, and he ends up dead. And then the dad ends up taking over the lion throne, and her bear relatives leave, and she's like, wait a minute, why aren't we leaving? Like, it's all over, it's done, we could go back to Denmark, where we're from, yada yada yada. And he's like, we're not leaving, like, I'm the ruler now, like, I'm the Lion King, you're the princess, like, we're not leaving this estate, it's us now. And she's like, I didn't sign up for that, I just want to find you and save you, yada yada. And then like a lot of emotional conversations happen, and he pretty much just was talking to everyone like a ruler, and like talking to her like her father, and like her friends are like in awe, because none of the parents in that society actually act like parents. And he let Arya stay, because like she's like in the mourning over her sister, which just died in her arms, and her boyfriend stays and lives with her, and she ends up being basically the princess of the Lion Clan. And her cousin, who was like trying to kill her because he's like basically the prince of the Lion Clan, his mom, like Rose, her dad's sister, Christopher's sister, took him away like to readjust over the like transition of their like leading family members. And she's like, you're gonna make me stay in the same house as Brandon, who was trying to kill me. And then that was an emotional conversation, and she kind of was accepting the fact by the time it was bedtime, and she was like sleeping in a lavish huge bed. She's like, okay, I could accept this. And now she ends up accepting the fact that she's basically a member of like high society, and like an underground royal family, and really high ranking. And she has to just accept her new life now that she basically just helped her daddy get for them. And yeah, and that's pretty much it. And a lot of other things happen with her bear family. Like, she has 2 aunts that that helped her mom and dad raised her, but the lion family murdered them. So she has one more surviving aunt, well actually 2, because Rose, her dad's sister, and then which she didn't really seem that taken with, but she really wanted to meet her mom's sister, who ended up getting murdered at her young age of like 6 years old. And so she was like desperate to meet Meadow's mom, and it didn't happen in the book, but it was getting set up that he could meet her. And I'm sure I did not cover everything, and I'm sure I flipped around going back and forth, and I wanted to make sure I remembered everything. But I'm gonna tell you that these 2 books, the Hunting November and the book that came before it, Killing November, are very detailed books, very complex books, but they're very fast-paced. Like, if I didn't make myself stop in the day, I could probably have finished this in the day and just kept going. But I felt like every 10 pages I needed a little bit of a break, because it was just so dramatic, and I'm like, holy crap, I can't believe that just happened. And keep in mind that these are high school student aged kids, and they were going out there like getting ready to fight with grown men. Like, I mean, that right there is crazy to me. Like, men that aren't good are gonna look like at a teenage girl and be like, yeah, I'm just gonna beat the crap out of you, and like, I'm sworn to this guy, so if he tells me to kill you, I'm just gonna kill you. Like, that, to me, that's just insane. But hopefully if she ever comes out with a third book, which I don't think she will, but I hope she does, that the new leading role of her father and her aunt, who she never met, will make a better society of this like underground society, because it sounds like this society could do a lot of good in the world, because I kept saying like how much they could do, but they always end up like doing the opposite and just trying to get their power. So that's what they were trying to stop her grandfather from doing. But hopefully she comes out with a new book soon. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for watching. Bye.